First of all, I'd like to state from the outset that I would like to see election of the Chief Executive and the entire Legislative Council by universal suffrage as soon as possible, that is in 2012. Regarding the election of the Chief Executive, the specific arrangement that we need to deal with in accordance with the provisions of the Basic Law is how to form the nominating committee. And in regard to the nominating committee, I suggest that we should use the existing selection committee for the Chief Executive as a basis for forming the nominating committee. So without changing the structure of the existing selection committee for the Chief Executive, I suggest that in 2012, the nominating committee should be composed of 4 sections. As at present, industrial, commercial and financial sector, the professions, labor, social services, religious and other sectors, members of LegCo, representatives of district-based organizations, deputies to the National People's Congress, representatives of the Hong Kong members of the National Committee of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference. We should use the 4 groupings as at present, but increase the size of the committee to 1,800 by doubling the size of the first 3 sectors and increasing the size of the 4th sector to include all elected members of district councils. By doing so, we would have increased the electorate for the nominating committee to more than 3.2 million. In other words, I propose that the nominating committee in 2012 should consist of 1,800 people altogether, and including all the elected members of the district councils. But if this is not achievable in 2012, I suggest that the selection committee for the Chief Executive should be remodeled along the lines I am recommending in 2012, that is to be expanded along the lines of the nominating committee, which I just proposed. And then in 2017, we move toward election of the Chief Executive by universal suffrage, provided that the candidate is able to obtain sufficient nominations by the nominating committee. As regards the nominating procedure, I recommend that every candidate should be able to get overall 10% of the votes of the nominating committee. In addition, he or she should be able to obtain 10% of votes in each of the 4 sectors. As regards the Legislative Council, I suggest that we move towards election of the Legislative Council by universal suffrage also as soon as possible in 2012. And we should be able to meet the principles of balanced representation and meeting the interests of different sectors of our community if we divide the seats into 2 broad categories. Those elected by universal suffrage according to the proportional representation system in geographical constituencies as at present. Let's increase the size of the LegCo to 80 and half of the councillors to be elected as at present in geographical constituencies based on proportional representation. And the remaining half to be elected by all the people of Hong Kong, Kowloon and New Territories as a single constituency by the PR list system. And any person can put forward a list. Even one single candidate can put forward a list. Political parties, other groupings, or independent candidates can get together to put forward a list. And if they get, say, 30% of the votes, then they get 30% of the PR list seats. This PR list system is quite common. It's adopted by more than a dozen countries, including Japan, Germany, New Zealand. And if this is not achievable in 2012, then I recommend that in 2012 we keep the existing 30 geographical constituencies, 30 functional constituencies, and add 20 seats for election by the people of Hong Kong in a single Hong Kong-wide constituency by the PR list system. And in 2016, we increased the PR list seats to 40 and phase out all functional constituencies. In other words, according to my timetable, we should be able to achieve election of the entire Legislative Council by universal suffrage by 2016 at the latest. So this is briefly a presentation of my election platform.